Hi, Internet family. I just wanted to read you this quick excerpt because it is so good. So feel free to put the phone down and listen. There's not going to be anything going on except for me reading to you here. This is from the book The Magic of Thinking Big, which is a great book. It's a classic by David Schwartz. And the bit that I'm going to read to you is on page 57. Here we go. So feel free to chill out, put your phone down, listen. It's about mindset. Okay. This is under a listing of, let's see, which chapter is it in? Chapter 3, Building Confidence and Destroying Fear. So it's tip number 2, page 57. Here we go. Withdraw only positive thoughts from your memory bank. I was closely associated several years ago in Chicago with a firm of psychological consultants. They handled many types of cases, but mostly marriage problems and psychological adjustment situations, all dealing with mind matters. One afternoon, as I was talking with the head of the firm about his profession and his techniques for helping a seriously maladjusted person, he made this remark. You know, there would be no need for my services if people would just do one thing. What's that? I asked eagerly. Simply this. Destroy their negative thoughts before those thoughts become mental monsters. Most individuals I try to help, he continued, are operating their own private museum of mental horror. Many marriage difficulties, for example, involve the honeymoon monster. The honeymoon wasn't as satisfactory as one or both of the marriage partners had hoped, but instead of burying the memory, they reflected on it hundreds of times until it was a giant obstacle to successful marital relationships. They come to me as much as 5 or 10 years later. Usually, of course, my clients don't see where their trouble lies. It's my job to uncover and explain the source of their difficulty to them and help them to see what a triviality it really is. A person can make a mental monster out of almost any unpleasant happening, my psychologist friend went on. A job failure, a jilted romance, a bad investment, disappointment in the behavior of a teenage child, these are common monsters I have to help troubled people destroy. It is clear that any negative thought, if fertilized with repeated recall, can develop into a real mind monster, breaking down confidence and paving the way to serious psychological difficulties. In an article in Cosmopolitan magazine, The Drive Toward Self-Destruction, Alice Mulcahy pointed out that upward of 30,000 Americans commit suicide each year and another 100,000 attempt to take their own lives. To give you guys some context to that, I grew up in a town and the full population was 5,000. 30,000 people kill themselves just in our country every year. Anyway, she went on to say, there is shocking evidence that millions of other people are killing themselves by slower, less obvious methods. Still others are committing spiritual rather than physical suicide, constantly seeking out ways to humiliate, punish, and generally diminish themselves. The psychologist friend mentioned before told me how he helped one of his patients to stop committing mental and spiritual suicide. This patient, he explained, was in her late 30s and had 2 children. In lay terminology, she suffered from severe depression. She looked back on every incident of her life as being an unhappy experience. Her school days, her marriage, the bearing of her children, the places she had lived, all were thought of negatively. She volunteered that she couldn't remember ever having been truly happy. And since what one remembers from the past colors what one sees in the present, she saw nothing but pessimism and darkness. When I asked her what she saw in a picture when I showed her, she said, "It looks like there will be a terrible thunderstorm tonight." That was the gloomiest interpretation of the picture I've yet heard. The picture was a large oil painting of the sun low in the sky and a jagged rocky coastline. The painting was very cleverly done and could be construed to be either a sunrise or a sunset. The psychologist commented to me that what a person sees in the picture is clue to his personality. Most people say it's a sunrise, but the depressed, mentally disturbed person nearly always says it's a sunset. As a psychologist, I can't change what is already in a person's memory, but I can, with the patient's cooperation, help the individual to see his past in a different light. That's the general treatment I used on this woman. I worked with her to help her to see joy and pleasure in her past instead of total disappointment. After 6 months, she began to show improvement. At that point, I gave her a special assignment. Each day I asked her to think of and write down 3 specific reasons she has to be happy. Then at her next appointment with me on Thursdays, I'd go over her list with her. I continued this sort of treatment for 3 months. Her improvement was very satisfactory. Today, that woman is very well adjusted to her situation. She's positive and certainly as happy as most people. When this woman quit drawing negatives from her memory bank, she was headed toward recovery. Whether this psychological problem is big or little, the cure comes when one learns to quit drawing negatives from one's memory bank and withdraws positives instead. Don't build mental monsters. Refuse to withdraw the unpleasant thoughts from your memory bank. When you remember situations of any kind, concentrate on the good part of the experience. Forget the bad. Bury it. That sound is Lily in her litter box, burying things. Sorry. If you find yourselves thinking about the negative side, turn your mind off completely. A spiritual term for this is white lighting things. When you get into a mental loop too dark, just imagine pure white light going through. This does not solve all your problems, but it does help in the moment. And here's something very significant and very encouraging. Your mind wants you to forget the unpleasant. If you will just cooperate, unpleasant memories will gradually shrivel and the teller in your memory bank will cancel them out. So let that be inspiration to start thinking more positively. I will include in the info section below a link to a video I was just watching and listening to by Louise Hay, and simply listening to it as you're doing your errands or washing dishes, whatever, will allow your mental state to raise up and then allow more blessings to come into your reality. This is The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Had to share this with you because it was so good, because so often we think that we're just victims to what's going on in our mind and we forget that we can change it. Yes, it takes habit building, practice, and effort, but it's so worth it when you do it. So sending you guys lots of love. Have a beautiful day.